welcome back to Untitled Deco. I know it's been some time since I've seen you here, but I've been working on some things. In case you haven't figured it out from the title, I am now offering flower preservations here at Untitled. And so I've been working really hard to create some sample pieces to show anytime, and since they look nicer in person and I can't be keeping pieces made from your bouquet, so I made several pieces, and here are just two examples of the pieces that we made from a bouquet that I preserved. And we are making several pieces at once, so this is going to be kind of a long video, so let's get started. First, let's reveal our bouquet. This bin is labeled with roses and ranunculus, so I have several bins to go through, so this is going to be a little bit of a speedy review. These flowers are completely dried, and I use silica gel to dry them. I have a separate video for how I work with the silica gel for flower drying, so you can check that out if you need the tutorial. Here are about all the different types of flowers that we will be working with for this preservation. There are more individual flowers in the bouquet, but most of them are duplicates of what is shown here. Okay, so we are working with a lot here. Let me just show you everything that we are going to be working with. We have, of course, our flowers, and here is our letter E and letter S modes. We have a square mode, a hexagon mode, and this gemstone. Here's a little ring holder that I would like to cast, but ended up not having enough resin for it. For the resin, we are using Total-Boat's Thick Set Clear Casting Epoxy. This one is a 3:1 ratio, and here's the Thick Set Fathom. Don't confuse them, they're different types of resin. For the first layer, we are using the regular thick set because we are only pouring about 1/2 inch deep to hold the flowers in place. This resin is a 3:1 ratio by volume, so we are using a measuring cup that has the 3:1 ratio already set, and here I'm just pouring the resin first, part A, and then we are going to add the hardener in there. Once I add the hardener into the resin, you'll notice how foggy the mixture is. We have to mix it and make sure that the mixture is clear. This process usually takes about 5-ish minutes, and I've cut some of it off because even if I did speed up the whole 5 minutes, it would still take up a lot of time. But you'll see that once I'm done mixing, the mixture is clear. You'll of course notice the bubbles from the mixing. That's just the nature of mixing resin. But if we let the resin sit for like 5 to 10 minutes, it should clear up. I find that Total Boat's casting resins, both their thickset and the thickset Fathom, are pretty good at releasing bubbles. So if you wanted to try out the resins after watching this video, I do have a coupon code in the description. As I let the resin rest for the bubbles to rise to the surface, I am just setting up my molds here. And all of these molds are from AAJ Molds. You'll be able to find the link to her shop in the description as well. Okay, so now I've already let my resin rest for several minutes and it's pretty clear. I used a heat gun to pop any of the bubbles at the surface and we're ready to pour. I am not pouring too much for this first layer, only about half an inch deep, probably even only a quarter inch deep, because I just need the flowers to stay in place, and the higher the level of resin, the more the flowers will move. Now we're ready to place the flowers. I have about a 45-minute to an hour work time with this resin, so I am just creating the designs as I go. If you did book a flower preservation with me though, you will get a design proof. Even if you opt out for it, I would probably still send one anyways because I want to make sure that you like what is being made with your bouquet. For me personally, I like to pack the mold with lots of flowers. That's just my personal style, and we can do so many other things, different layouts, like just the center, one side or two sides. The options are limitless, but that's something we will discuss when you book your bouquet preservation with me. For now, you get to see what an example of a designer's choice would look like. For the blocks, you saw that I just placed the flowers facing up. That was to help with the bubbles for when I pour the second layer. Bubbles tend to get trapped in the center of the roses a lot, and if we were to work backwards, we might end up with surprise bubbles because it can't rise to the surface. Unfortunately, with these letters, I have to work backwards because of the way we demold it. We can help bring the bubbles up to the surface by moving the flowers a little bit here and there. That way any bubbles trapped inside will be moved around and can float to the surface. Now I'm pretty much done with the flower placement. Now I'm just going back and pouring resin over the roses in the blocks and other flowers in the blocks. Kind of like coating them, but also because I have the resin left over anyways. Now it's been about 24 hours since we poured the first layer and we're back for the second layer. For the second layer, we are using Total Boat's thick set Fathom casting resin. That is the deeper pour resin. This one pours up to 2 inches deep, and the regular thick set that we use for our first layer, it only pours up to 1 inch deep. For time purposes, I had already pre-mixed this resin and let it rest for a good hour or two. This one has a really long work time, about 5 hours. Although maybe because I don't pour as deep and big, like river tables big, I noticed that I do have like 12 hours at least of work time with this. Because of the long work time, the bubbles have a lot of time to rise to the surface, so I can get away without using a pressure pot or vacuum chamber. I just have to consistently come back and check for the bubbles to pop them. I'll show you a few clips with timestamps later when I come back and check for the bubbles. And you can see I'm just going around the edges with the popsicle stick right now to get the bubbles from the corners to the center, so that I can pop them with the heat gun. The letters were also feeling a tad empty, so I'm just adding a little bit of more flowers to it. Now this is about an hour since I poured that second layer. This is one of the many times that I will come back and check the pieces to pop any bubbles that float to the surface and bring up any bubbles that are trapped in the flowers. Another hour has passed and it looks pretty clear, but there are tiny bubbles that the camera cannot capture. For time purposes, I did not film every single time I went back to pop the bubbles, but I went back pretty much every single hour. And you can visibly see that this clip is not as bright because there's no sunlight anymore compared to the previous clips. Another day has passed and we are back to pour that final layer to fill the mold up to the top. I only need to pour the hexagon and the gemstone for this one. The block is pretty much filled to the top. It's not as deep as the other two, and the ENS are also not as deep. We are using the Total Bolt Thickset Fathom again for this third layer. We can finally demold these now. All the babysitting is done, and I had let these pieces sit for at least 2 days before I am back to demold them. So it's probably been 5 days since we poured the first layer. These blocks take so long and so much work, but look, I can say it's totally worth it. Here is the side view of this hexagon block, and when the light hits it a certain way, you can definitely see the layer lines, and that's just the nature of resin since we are pouring in layers. But look at how gorgeous this block is. We will sand the surface, the top of this hexagon, and add a top coat to this. For now, let's take a look at the rest of the pieces. For this square block, unfortunately it does not go as deep as the other blocks, so these flowers are sort of popping out, and even if I had filled the mold, it still wouldn't cover the entire rows. So we're probably going to have to add tape around and pour into that and then clean it up. That is definitely going to be a process, so if I get the chance to film it, I will definitely share that with you. For now, we can just admire how nice these floral blocks turned out. Just because the pieces are out of the mold doesn't mean they're fully complete. We still have to sand the pieces and then add a top coat to it. I am starting with a low grit sandpaper and then working my way up to 1500 grit, wet sanding this block to reduce any of the dust from the epoxy. To be honest, this ended up being kind of a bad example of how to sand because the residue just ended up sitting in the water and it totally scratched up the bottom of my piece. I ended up having to sand the bottom of the piece and dome that as well. So I did a top coat for the top and the bottom. The purpose of the sanding is to get an even surface and to open up any of the bubbles that are trapped slightly underneath in the piece. That way we can fill it in and that's one less bubble on your piece. I did sand all of the pieces, but I will only show you this hexagon because the sanding is quite a process and that would just add more time to this already kind of long video if I still have you here. Now I'm just cleaning it off to show you what the top looks like right now. We are going to add a top coat to the scratched up foggy piece. I have a separate top coating tutorial if you need to see how I do the top coats. Now I'll just skip to showing you what these blocks look like out in the sunlight, and you can see that shiny top coat. It looks so nice compared to when I first demolded it, and I feel like it definitely shows off the flowers a little more. Here is how the gemstone turned out, and I actually had to dome the sides too, which came out pretty well. I absolutely love this shape, and I have a very cute mini version that I will have to work with and show you one day. Let's move on to the letters. They're definitely one of my favorite things to make because they add a personal touch compared to the blocks. Even the back of this piece is so pretty that I didn't even realize that I was showing the back until a little bit in. Now I just want to show the blocks in a different background because they're clear, so every background will look a little bit different. If you wanted to add some background color to your blocks, we can definitely do that as well. And I have two bonus blocks to show you. I made these a while ago actually, and I just finished them up with the rest of these blocks. Here is the rectangle, and here we have the standing circle. This layout is a little bit different, and it's more towards one side, which is also very pretty. Thank you for watching this flower preservation video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have flowers that you want preserved, you can book your reservation at ellaful.com and let me know down in the comments below what else you want to see next. I'll see you next time.